folk singer is dead after she was attacked by a pair of coyotes.
What is the monkey doing? Tell me what the monkey...
He ripped your face off!
We actually have a trainer in the water with one of our whales.
If I show weakness, if I retreat, I may be hurt, I may be killed.
Baby Azaria Chamberlain was taken by a dingo back in 1980.
Oh yeah, we are... Oh yeah, why did I say it like that? Very weird sexual undercurrent to the intro today. Oh yeah, welcome back everybody, ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, my non-binary pals, to a new episode of Man Eaters, the only true crime podcast on the entire goddamn internet, where all the killers are real animals, whether it's biting, scratchings, maulings, or clawings. We are here to talk about it. I was not here last week. I'm so sorry. Life got in the way. Been acting in a little piece of environmental theatre called Now and Then in my hometown, which has been going really well. So, not that any of you asked, but thank you anyway. We are back today. Brand new episode with a bit of an asterisk put on the end there. It's brand new in the sense of I'm recording it today, but we are, for the very first time, guys, and I've been teasing this for a while, for the very first time in Man Eater's history, in the nearly 4-year history of this show, we are going back and we are taking another stab, taking another claw. A stab is not really an animal thing. Taking another swipe, that's good. Taking another swipe at a story that we have completed once before. I have mentioned many times that I have a desire to go back and cover some stories that I tackled early on in my man-eating career. Some great stories. Here's the backstory here. Like, the best man-eater stories are obviously the ones I tackled first, but the caveat is that the audio quality plus my skills as a storyteller were not as evolved as they are now. By no means are they good now, but they were somehow worse back in 2020 and 2021. So we are going to have another swipe at one of the very first stories we ever told. This is the REDUX episode of the Sankebetsu Brown Bear Massacre. Very excited. This is one of the best man-eater stories I think there is. There's so much detail here. It's a horrific story. And now that I kind of know what I'm doing, I'm very excited to take another crack at it. It's a fantastic story. A real classic, I would say, in my top 10 easy of all the man-eater stories that we've covered in the past. So we are going to do that today. So yeah, settle in, gang. Might be a bit of a long one because I've done my research today, and I got to tell you, I am pretty damn excited to be tackling, once again, the Sankebetsu Brown Bear Massacre. When people think of Japan nowadays, they tend to picture crowded cities, temples, and rice paddies stretching as far as the eye can see. But in the early 1900s, Japan still had a wild frontier. Hokkaido, the northmost island. Now, back then, it was a place of isolation, brutal winters, and opportunity for those desperate enough to try. The Japanese government had only recently began encouraging settlers to move there. Officials saw Hokkaido as an untapped farmland, a way to relieve population pressure in Honshu, and also to assert dominance over territory traditionally inhabited by an indigenous people of the north. Families from southern Japan packed up. They boarded ferries and they trudged into the snowy wilderness to carve out lives among forests that seemed to go forever. Now, the settlement of the Roku-sensowa in Sankebetsu, where our story takes place, it wasn't much more than a cluster of wooden houses and barns held together by local timber. At night, these cabins glowed with faint oil lamps, and during the day, settlers hacked at the frozen ground to plant corn and beans. They cleared trees for firewood, and they set crude traps for game. It was a hard existence, one where every winter could kill you, just from sheer exposure to the elements. But the people weren't alone out there. Hokkaido, at the time, it teemed with wildlife. The Asuri brown bear, aka Urus arctos lacetos, ruled the forests. These bears were massive titans. They were behemoths, shaggy, and they were black-furred, and they were more than capable of killing a human being with a single swipe of their razor-sharp claws. Now, they shared this land not only with people, but also the Ezo deer, which numbered in the hundreds of thousands, as well as foxes that darted across the snow in search of mice. Rivers ran thick with salmon in the summer, and in earlier years, wolves had roamed the island in packs, although by 1915 they were nearly extinct, driven out by overhunting and encroaching farms. Now, for the indigenous people of this area, the bear was not only an animal, but it was a god, Kimun Kumeui, the mountain deity, both feared and revered. They performed elaborate rituals when hunting them, treating the bear's death as a sacred offering. But the Japanese settlers who arrived in Hokkaido often just saw the bear as simply a pest, something to be shot when it wandered too close to the cornfields. Now, this gap in understanding, this reverence versus dismissal, would prove to be totally catastrophic later on. This was the setting in late 1915, a raw, dangerous frontier land where humans had just begun to take a fragile claim, and one where one bear in particular, was about to challenge that claim in the bloodiest way possible. Late November 1915, snow had begun to settle on the forests of Hokkaido, a thin, icy layer that would soon thicken into waist-deep drifts. The settlers of Rokusensawa were busy preparing for the long winter. They were stacking firewood, they were reinforcing their cabins, and they were securing their food stores. Now, life here was hard, but it was predictable. That was until the bear arrived. Now, it started out small, almost dismissible. A farmer named Kizuke Ota noticed something had disturbed his corn store. The heavy sacks were torn open and scattered across the snow. Large tracks led away, disappearing into the shadowed pines. Now, at first, the settlers thought it might be a fox or a pack of stray dogs, but then the prints appeared again, massive, round, and unmistakably bear-shaped. Each step left impressions that could fit a human head, and the tracks weren't wandering either. They seemed to circle and study the houses, as if the animal was calculating its next move. At the time, the settlers lacked the experience to understand what this actually meant. Most assumed the bear would follow the normal pattern a bear would make. It would take what it wanted and then retreat into the wilderness for hibernation. But this bear was different. Hungry, massive, and remarkably bold, it didn't seem to fear humans. Its intelligence, which was already impressive in any Urusoi brown bear, meant that it could observe, learn, and return at will. One villager remembered its prints were like barrels, deep in the snow. Every morning we found them closer to the house. If it came again, no fence could stop it. Now, that night, people slept fitfully. Every creak of the cabin, every howl of the wind, sending shivers through the community. The forests were no longer just trees and snow. They were alive with a predator, and it had already chosen its hunting ground. Hokkaido's brown bears were not merely passive grazers. The Asuri brown bear is an omnivore. It consumes nuts, berries, roots, and fish, but it's also an opportunistic hunter. And unlike the grizzlies of North America, these bears evolved in dense forests and rely on stealth, patience, and observation. They can climb trees, they can wade rivers, and they can move quietly through the snow in ways most humans would never notice. Now, once the bear discovered human food, stored corn, livestock, or even unprotected homes, it began to associate humans with an easy meal. And so, in the days leading up to the first attack, the bear didn't just pass through. It lingered, observing the settlement, probing the defenses, and testing the resolve of the humans who had come to the north to tame it. The stage was set. What began as just tracks in the snow, almost dismissed, would escalate into a series of attacks that no one in Hokkaido would ever dare to forget. The morning of December 9th, 1915 began like any other for the settlers of Roku-Sensawa. The men were out chopping wood and checking traps, their breaths rising in misty clouds. Inside the Ota household, Take Ota, heavily pregnant, tended to her baby and a visiting neighbor, unaware that the wilderness was outside, ready to strike. The first sign of danger was subtle, a scraping sound against a wall, a faint crack of timber under immense weight. And then it came. A thunderous crash as the bear smashed through the window, sending shards of glass and splintered wood flying into the room. The settlers would later describe it as the sound of a falling tree on a house multiplied. This bear was massive, easily 10 feet tall when it reared on its hind legs, its black fur matted with snow and grime, muscles rippling underneath its thick skin. Its head was described as like a horse, with eyes that glimmered with uncanny intelligence and hunger. Take Ota screamed as the animal seized her, dragging her towards the door. The baby was caught in its first swipe, crushed before the neighbor could even react. The bear then swiveled, swatting aside furniture like toys and moving with terrifying speed and precision. By the time the men returned from the fields, the house was empty, save for the wreckage of splintered wood, overturned furniture, and the faint scent of blood in the icy air. They found Take Ota's partially eaten remains in the snow nearby. The baby's body was also found. It had been carried off and abandoned under a pine tree, its tiny frame unrecognizable. Neighbors later recalled the snow was red, as if the winter itself had been stained. Now, this first attack revealed something chilling. The bear was not acting defensively or out of curiosity. It had learned, it had planned, and it had fed. And unlike a lot of animal encounters where an animal strikes once and then retreats, this bear now associated humans with food. A behavioral change that wildlife biologists today called food conditioning. Once a large predator learns that humans can be a reliable source of calories, it becomes exponentially more dangerous. Now, the community was thrown into a panic. Families fled to neighboring homes, huddling together, posting guards, and trying desperately to secure their food. They had learned one terrible truth. The bear was no longer just a wild animal wandering the woods. It was a predator stalking their home, and it would return. As night fell, the wind howled through the empty streets of Roku-Sensawa, rattling shutters and carrying with it the faint, eerie echo of the bear's roars. Inside the cabins, families whispered prayers, they clutched their children, and they hoped that the next knock on the door wouldn't bring death. The forest had begun to fight back, and the settlers were only just beginning to realize just how powerless they truly were. After the brutal attack on the Ota household, the settlers of Roku-Sensawa were gripped by a terror that they had never known. Word spread quickly through the small community. A bear had not only entered a home, but had killed and partially eaten a woman and her baby. Families abandoned their cabins to gather at the Miyoki household, a larger, sturdier home built near the center of the settlement. Inside, dozens of people huddled together, some clutching children, others gripping rifles that were too old and too slow to truly be any effective. The survivors worked frantically to fortify their house. Doors were reinforced with timber, windows were boarded over, and fires were stoked for warmth and light. Guards were posted in shifts, keeping watch through narrow slits in the shutters. The wind outside howled, carrying the faintest sound of the forest. Branches snapping, snow crunching, and each noise was met with tense silence. Even the most hardened men admitted later that their nerves were frayed beyond measure. Now, one survivor remembered saying, "Every gust of wind on the shutters felt like its paw. No one slept. We listened to every crack in the wood as if it were a scream." Another recounted how children, crying quietly, whispered, Will it come back? And adults could only shush them, unsure themselves. The panic not only set a fear of death, but a fear of helplessness. The settlers had guns, yes, but they were ill-prepared for an animal of this size and this intelligence. Each rifle was single shot, often misfiring in the cold, and their bullets had little effect against a bear's massive body. The wilderness, once a backdrop for survival, had become a predator's playground. Every forested hill, every shadowed thicket could conceal an enormous animal that had already proven it could strike with lethal precision. Amidst this terror, small acts of human courage emerged. Neighbors comforted each other, formed watch rotations, and whispered plans for escape. But the truth was undeniable. The bear had learned, adapted, and it was very likely to return. This was no longer a random encounter. This was the beginning of a campaign, a series of calculated, repeated attacks on the settlement. As night fell over Roku-Sensawa, the forest seemed alive. The wind's howl, the snapping of distant branches, and the faint echoes of distant predators combined into a tense symphony. Every settler knew instinctively that the bear was out there, watching, waiting, just planning for its next move. The stage was now set for the horror that would follow at the Miyoki household, the night that would come to define the Sankebetsu Brown Bear Incident in infamy. The night of December 10th, 1915 was cold and it was unforgiving. The settlers had barricaded themselves in the Miyoki household, a larger, more fortified cabin that now served as the community's refuge. Inside, families huddled together, clutching children and rifles, hearts pouring with fear. Oil lamps flickered in the corners, casting long, trembling shadows against timber walls. The air was thick with anxiety, and the faint smell of sweat, smoke, and fear clung to the room. Then came the first warning. A heavy thud against the outer wall, followed by a deep, guttural roar that shook the floorboards. Windows rattled in their frames. Some settlers pressed their faces to the shutters, catching glimpses of the enormous black beast that was in the bear, moving with terrifying intelligence, its breath fogging the glass. The attack began suddenly. The bear smashed through the wall, splintering the timber like paper. It lunged to the nearest victim, a young mother clutching her child. The woman screamed as the bear's massive paw struck her chest, breaking her ribs instantly. The small child's body was thrown aside, landing amongst overturned furniture, partially concealed beneath debris. Survivors later described the bear's movements as deliberate, almost methodical, first disabling the strongest adults and then seizing the most vulnerable victims. One man tried to shield his wife and child. The bear swiped him aside with a single forepaw, snapping his ribs and crushing his arm. Another man fired his rifle point blank, the gun's report echoing in the cabin, but the bullets only seemed to anger the animal further. It reared up, bared its teeth, and bit down on a young boy, crushing his skull with horrifying precision. The sounds of splintering bone, screams, and the bear's guttural growls filled the cabin. Now, some survivors dove underneath furniture, trying desperately to remain unseen. Others ran for doors, only to be met with the bear's sheer speed. One woman crawled behind a stove, witnessing the bear drag a man across the floor by the neck, leaving a trail of blood and tattered clothing. The bear would occasionally pause to gnaw on its victims, tearing flesh with crushing force before moving on to the next. When the settlers finally regrouped in the chaos, they found the floor slick with blood, splintered furniture, and the mangled bodies of the dead. Children's faces were unrecognizable. Women had been clawed, bitten, and tossed aside like rag dolls. Survivors later recounted crawling over bodies to escape, trying to ignore the smell of blood and human flesh, and the low, satisfied growls of the bear moving through the wreckage. 7 people were killed that night, including children, women, and men who had tried in vain to defend their families. Those who did survive did so through a combination of luck, hiding, and the bear's focus on the most immediate victims. The psychological toll was immense. One man would later say, "I can still hear the scratching on the walls, the roar, the cries. I saw my neighbors torn apart, and I could do nothing." This attack confirmed a terrible reality. The Sankebetsu bear was not a wild animal acting defensively. It was a predator that had learned, adapted, and now hunted humans as prey. Its intelligence combined with its raw physical power, massive forearms, claws 6 inches long, and a bite force capable of crushing bone, made it one of the most dangerous predators in recorded history. After that night, the settlement's sense of security was shattered forever. The forest outside, once a backdrop for survival and hard work, had become an arena of horror. The bear would not be deterred by walls, by rifles, or by fire. The Miyoki household, it was a massacre, and it was a turning point. It marked the escalation from occasional raids to a calculated, repeated campaign that would haunt Hokkaido for weeks to come. After the horrors at Miyoki House, the survivors of Roku Sensawa were left shaken, their grief and fear mingling with desperation. The bear had proven it was not merely a wild animal, it was a predator. And predators, as the village now painfully understood, did not give up. Authorities were finally alerted. Word reached Yamamoto Hikachi, a famed bear hunter known throughout Hokkaido for tracking and killing large man-eating bears. He had taken down predators far larger and more cunning than most people could imagine, but even he approached Sankebetsu with a mix of confidence and caution. The settlement had been terrorized, and the bear's pattern suggested intelligence beyond what one might expect from a wild animal. Yamamoto reportedly told officials, "This one is not hunting for survival alone. It seems to be hunting for practice." The hunt began in the deep forest surrounding Roku Sensawa. Snow had thickened, covering footprints, but also amplifying sound. Every branch snap, every distant howl was a possible warning. Hunters moved in small groups, rifles loaded, hearts pounding, scanning the shadows for even a flicker of movement. Now they knew from the survivors' accounts that the bear returned repeatedly, stalking houses, testing defenses, and feeding on the victims it had already struck. This was no random wanderer. It was calculating, patient, and relentless. The first days were filled with near misses. The hunters would catch sight of a massive track or a broken branch or tufts of black fur snagged in trees, but the bear always seemed to stay just out of range. It was learning from them too. If the hunters approached from one side of the forest, the bear would slip silently around the other, leaving them to stumble through snowdrifts in silence and frustration. One villager later recalled, "It was as if he knew we were coming. I felt its eyes on me, even when I could see nothing." The hunters discovered a chilling pattern. The bear had begun catching human remains in the forest, covering them with branches and snow. This behavior, known in modern wildlife biology as food caching, is common for bears, but rarely with humans as the target. It was feeding systematically, returning to the same spots and leaving a grim trail that told the hunters how intelligent and persistent it had become. Each night, the survivors huddled in fear, knowing the bear could return. One man reported hearing the creature's low growl echoing through the woods while the wind whistled through the pines. It was a sound that chilled even the bravest men, a deep, resonant warning that the hunter was near, observing and waiting. Even the hunters, seasoned veterans of Hokkaido's forests, admitted the tension was unlike anything they had experienced before. As the hunt progressed, it became a deadly game of cat and mouse. The bear's sheer size and strength allowed it to move through deep snow with terrifying speed. A single swipe of its massive forepaw could crush a hunter or tear a tree trunk. Its senses of smell and hearing were unmatched, allowing it to detect human movements from hundreds of meters away, even under dense snow. Every tracking attempt required patience, stealth, and nerves of steel. For Yamamoto and his team, the question was no longer whether they could kill the bear, it was whether they could even survive the hunt themselves. The forests of Hokkaido had become a battlefield, and the bear was a master strategist. Each day brought near encounters, scratches of claws on trees, broken branches, and fleeting glimpses of black fur disappearing into the shadows. The bear was indeed alive, intelligent, and still very hungry. The hunt had become a high-stakes ordeal. One misstep, one loud snap of a branch, and the hunters themselves could become prey. Each night brought dread. Each track brought tension, and every roar from the forest reminded them that the bear was watching, calculating, and preparing for its next strike. By mid-December, the Sankebetsu bear had become a ghost in the snow, a massive shadow moving silently through the forests, stalking the settlement and evading every attempt to kill it. Each day, hunters like Yamamoto tracked its massive footprints, found its caches of human remains hidden beneath branches and snow, and glimpsed fleeting movements amongst the trees. But the bear never attacked them directly, at least not yet. It was waiting, observing, and calculating. The village's fear had reached a fever pitch. Families huddled inside fortified cabins, refusing to leave except in groups. Fires were often kept burning through the night, but the flickering light offered little comfort. One man recalled, "We would hear the wind, the snapping of a branch, and our hearts would stop. Every sound could be its approach. Every shadow could be its eyes." The hunters, meanwhile, realized this would not be a quick encounter. Yamamoto knew they were dealing with a bear of extraordinary size and intelligence. Unlike most wild animals which flee when threatened, this bear had learned that humans were predictable and vulnerable. It was a predator on a scale that few had ever witnessed, capable of stalking and adapting with terrifying cunning. Finally, on December 14th, the hunters cornered the bear near a frozen riverbank. Snow fell silently around them, muffling sound, making each footstep deliberate. The bear had chosen this spot, perhaps to ambush or perhaps by chance. It was impossible to know. Yamamoto positioned his rifle, eyes scanning the dark forest for movement. The bear's black form was massive, easily 3 meters tall when standing on its powerful hind legs, muscles rippling beneath its black fur, and paws as wide as a man's torso. The first shot rang out. The bear roared, a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the icy river. It charged, snow flying from its paws, teeth bared, claws extended. Hunters fired again and again. Yamamoto later recalled how the bullets barely slowed it down. The beast's massive frame absorbed the impact that would have felled a lesser predator. The ground trembled as it collided with trees, snapping branches and barreling towards them like a living avalanche. The hunters circled, firing strategically, but the bear's intelligence and experience in stalking humans made it a deadly adversary. It twisted, dodged, and lunged with terrifying precision, countering every movement. At one point, it knocked a hunter aside with a single paw, sending him crashing into the snow. Finally, after an exhausting and terrifying exchange, Yamamoto's aim found its mark. Several well-placed shots struck the bear's vital areas. It staggered, its roar fading into a low, gurgling growl. And then the monster collapsed onto the snow, muscles twitching as life drained from it. For a moment, there was silence. The wind carried only the faint sound of snow settling and the hunter's ragged breathing. When they approached, the scale of the bear truly shocked them. Over 340 kilograms. That's roughly 750 pounds of muscle and fury. Its claws were 6 inches long, curved like sickles. Its jaws, capable of crushing bone with terrifying force, had consumed human flesh, and the stomach contained evidence from the victims it had killed. The bear's body bore scars from years of survival and previous fights, but none of the hunters could prepare for its sheer enormity. The village released a collective breath that they didn't realize they had been holding. 7 lives had been lost, several more injured, and the psychological scars ran deep. But the immediate threat, the creature that had terrorized Sankebetsu for weeks, well, it was finally over. Even so, survivors would never forget the sound of its roar, the flash of its claws, or the sensation of being hunted. The forests of Hokkaido remained wild and dangerous, but the bear that had become a nightmare for a small settlement was no more. Its skull and remains would later be preserved, a grim reminder of what happens when human ambition collides with the raw power of Japanese nature. With the bear finally dead, the immediate terror that had gripped Roken Sensawa began to ease. But the emotional and psychological scars ran deep. Families mourned the 7 lives lost in the attacks, including children, women, and men who had tried to defend their homes. Some survivors spoke of the nights that they spent awake, haunted by the sounds of the bear's roars, replaying the chaos of the Miyoki House massacre in their minds. One man would later recall, "Even when I closed my eyes, I could still see it. The shadow, the claws, the teeth, it followed me in my dreams." The settlement itself was changed forever. Some families abandoned their homes, leaving Roku Sensawa for good. Those who stayed faced the daunting task of rebuilding the cabins, replanting crops, and fortifying their lives against future wildlife encounters. The forest, once a provider of food and resources, was now a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked just beyond the edge of the human settlement. In the years that followed, the incident became a cautionary tale across Hokkaido and Japan. It illustrated the dangers of human expansion into wild habitats, especially when settlers failed to respect the intelligence and the power of local predators. The bear's repeated attacks were now understood as a case of food conditioning, a behavioral pattern where predators associate humans and their settlements with an easy source of protein. Scientists today recognize this as a key factor in man-eating behavior, from bears to big cats. As for the indigenous people who lived there, the event reaffirmed their traditional beliefs. To them, the bear had acted as a god, a mountain deity, punishing those who encroached too far into the wilderness. Offerings and rituals in later years were performed at the site where the bear had been killed, blending folklore with local memorization. The bear's skull and remains were preserved as both a scientific specimen and a grim artifact of the tragedy. Visitors to Roku Sensawa can still see the remnants of the massacre's history, small markers, memorials, and museums recounting the story, ensuring that the events of December 1915 are never forgotten. And yet, beyond the physical memorials, the incident does live on in the imagination. It serves as a reminder of what can happen when humans enter territories that wild animals have long been dominating. This is a story of survival, of fear, and of respect for the natural world. The Sankebetsu Brown Bear Incident remains one of the deadliest bear attacks in recorded history, not just for the number of lives lost, but for the intensity, intelligence, and relentlessness of the predator involved. In the end, we know that this bear was not a monster. It was a creature following its survival instincts, pushed to the extremes by hunger, circumstance, and an encroaching human settlement. And as for the people of Sankebetsu, it became a legend, a nightmare, and a lasting lesson in the raw, unforgiving power of Japan's natural world. And that's that. Our very first redo episode, the Sankebetsu Brown Bear Incident. If you were to ask me, like some of these, YouTubers and podcasters that do topics similar to this one, they're lucky enough to travel to some of the actual locations that they're talking about. This would have to be up there for where I'd want to go. In fact, I can't think of a place I would prefer to go. If some wealthy philanthropist producer was like, "Hey James, I want to send you out to somewhere to cover a story," I would definitely love to go to the Sankebetsu, because I would just love to see the memorials. There's a famous statue. I believe it's still there. It's like a really cool looking old, like Japanese looking bear statue that's there. It's kind of famous. If you Google Sankebetsu Brown Bear Incident, that is what will come up. The image of that memorial statue. Very cool story. Horrific, honestly. Someone should make a movie out of this. I'm sure they have, but this would be a fantastic horror movie. Just the visual of all those people huddling in the dark, lit up only by candles. And then, a bear just coming through and just fucking shit up. Incredible. Okay, we're going to take a quick break now. Maybe you'll hear some messages, maybe you won't, and we'll be back for the rest of our episode. Go and do a wee. And we are back. Are we back? Drum circle, are we back? Wow, the thing has not been recording the entire time. That's what you're telling me. God damn. That's crazy. So all the 40 minutes of me telling the story was not picked up by audio at all. I need a better producer. Oh, and speaking of better producer, can you guys hear that? I'm having some trouble with the microphone, and there's like a weird feedback happening. I'm very sorry. Hopefully. This is why you wear headphones, people. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that. Okay, let's move on, guys, to one of my favorite segments that we do on this show. It's the Scratch of the Day. Scratch of the Day, the segment of the show where we talk about animal attacks and human-animal conflict that has occurred in the news in recent weeks, and we talk about them and we learn together. And we have a couple sad stories. The first one, the headline reads, "Tragic. Horrified son watches dad, 72, mauled to death by wild animal in only attack in recent memory." Let's read this story. This is from The Sun, the US edition of The Sun. I didn't know that existed. Okay. A son made a horrifying discovery when he found his father in the midst of being mauled to death by a bear. This is a very bear-heavy episode today. Vernon Patton, 72, was spreading gravel with his tractor when his son came to check on him. After arriving at Mulberry Mountain in Arkansas, the son stumbled upon a gory sight. Patton's son discovered his elderly father on the brink of death as the 70-pound black bear was attacking him, NBC affiliate KNWA reported. 2 wardens of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission responded to the scene of the attack. The wardens killed the bear, which was described as a small to medium-sized bear believed to be a juvenile. The father was first immediately flown to the Washington Regional Medical Center in severe critical condition. Patton was later moved to UAMS. He died on September 14th, less than 2 weeks after the attack. Patton's family initially told the media that his injuries are extensive and ultimately not survivable. Quote, "Our beloved father, grandfather, husband and hero, Vernon Patton, was seriously injured in a bear attack while he was doing what he loved, working on his land with his family," the family told ABC affiliate 4029. Quote, "This has been an extraordinarily difficult time for our family, and we are deeply grateful for the outpouring of support that we have received. We ask that people show compassion and consideration as we focus on being together as a family for as long as we can." The family concluded their statement by thanking the public and all those who helped Patton. Quote, "We also want to extend our heartfelt thanks to the medical teams who are providing exceptional care and to everyone who has offered their prayers and kindness. At this time, we ask for privacy as we navigate this painful journey together as a family." The victim spent his life working in U.S. government jobs and military parks. He also founded the Ole Applegate Place Arts and Craft Festival in Bentonville, Arkansas. The AGFC noted that this is the first reported bear attack in Arkansas in 25 years. Quote, as far as we can tell, there has never been a documented attack in Arkansas, at least in recent memory. Keith Stevens from the AGFC told KNWA, if anyone encounters a black bear, they are encouraged to slowly back away. It's important not to run away as the bear will chase you. If that doesn't work, then a person should make loud noises and attempt to appear big. And that's the end of that story. I know this is not the point. I understand that. But can anyone explain to me why Kansas is Kansas, but the state this happened in is not Arkansas? I have yet to receive any explanation for that. America is a wacky country for a lot of reasons, but I think Kansas, Arkansas, that's probably the biggest. And I think Kansas may be getting away with this a little bit too easy too, because everyone's expecting Arkansas to be Arkansas. Maybe Arkansas is correct, and the other state is called Kansas. It sounds a little bit like cancer. That's probably why they don't want to do that. Okay, we're going back to calling it Arkansas. Obviously a really terrible story there. Yeah, it sucks to have been killed by a juvenile bear too. Like, if I was going to go out in a bear attack, I'd probably want to be like mauled to death by like the Sankebetsu Brown Bear, a massive hulking beast. But the dude was 72, so hey, probably fair enough that he got taken out by that bear. Really sad, and obviously thoughts go out to that family. I'm really impressed with the statement that the family released. Like, that was so professionally written. It's like a professional statement. It's like this had happened before. Yeah, pretty terrible. Actually, there's a link here to the next story. That's so funny, because the next story is kind of related. Let's move on to that story. It's another bear attack. We're almost 100% there today. This is from the Greek City Times, and the headline reads, chilling video captures Greek hikers' final moments as bear attack leads to fatal fall. I could be wrong. I believe we covered this story a few weeks ago, but back then I don't think this video footage existed, so that's why there is a resurgence of this story in my timeline. I'm going to read the article first, and then we'll play the video. So a Greek hiker has died in a tragic incident after being charged by a bear and falling into a ravine, with the harrowing encounter captured on his mobile phone. Christos, oh god, it's a really Greek name, Christos Stavrindinis, 61 years old, was hiking with a friend in the Fraktos forest in the northern Greece's Drama region on June 8th when the attack occurred. The chilling 49-second video shows a large brown bear appearing on the trail and moving towards him as he calls desperately for help. Moments later, his terrified screams echo as he plunges from a cliff. Good lord. In the footage, the man can be heard calling out for his companion, Dimitris. Where are you? Come to me. His voice grows increasingly desperate as the bear closes in. A dog accompanying the hikers barks furiously while the sound of pepper spray being used is also heard before the fatal fall. Dimitris, who witnessed the events unfold, later described how a day trip turned into a nightmare. Christos told me to come see the bear. At first I thought it was further away, but suddenly I realized it was only a few meters from him. He explained that, I can't remember how to say his name, Stavrindinis, attempted to deter the bear away with spray, but the bear charged again. Quote, the dog jumped in front of me and I also used spray to drive it back. It was huge, a fully grown bear, the first time I've ever seen one, he recalled. According to Dimitris, the bear appeared to strike Stavrindinis before he fell into the ravine. Despite desperate calls from him afterwards, there was no response. Emergency services were alerted, but the remote mountainous terrain made access extremely difficult. A forensic report confirmed that Stavrindinis died instantly from the fall. His funeral was held on June 12th. The incident has shocked the local community and renewed concerns about encounters with bears in northern Greece, where the population of bears has grown in recent years. I'm pretty confident we covered this story in June, but let's see if the video can play. I believe, if I can get the microphone to stop being a bitch, I believe I can get the audio on the computer. Hold on. Okay, let's watch this video. Hopefully you can hear this.
Πού είσαι, έλα κοντά μου.
Bit calm.
Βίντεο ντοκουμέντο από το κινητό τηλέφωνο του ορειβάτη Χρήστου Σταυριανίδη από
What
την
a
πολύτιμη
ridiculous
συνάντησή
language
του με την
Greek is.
αρκούδα στο φρακτό δράμας.
Πού είσαι, εδώ κοντά μου, έλα.
He's like too calm. Okay, so the bear has turned around and is now running at him. Oh, Jesus.
Ρίξε, Δημήτρη. Ρίξε σπρέι.
The pepper spray is what's making him cough. He's not just like having a weird allergy day. Oh! Oh, shit. Oh.
Ο άτυχος
Oh
ορειβάτης
my god. Fucking hell. I don't know what I was expecting. Jesus. I totally... Okay, so I was I just read the article, so I have no excuse for this. For some reason, when I was watching this, I'm like, oh, it's the friend who's got the phone. And then I realized, no, I've got to watch this again with the information now that it's the dude who gets attacked and falls off the cliff that's holding the phone. You basically lose sight of the bear for a little bit. I think because he was panicking, he stopped filming. And then you just see, like, it just goes wild. You see him falling down the cliff. God, he screams as he falls down. It's terrible. Let's watch that again.
Πού είσαι, έλα. Έλα κοντά.
I'm just going to skip forward a little bit.
Ρίξε, Δημήτρη.
Yeah, so the bears run up onto the path with him. He's trying to spray it. Oh, God. Here we go. You can hear it. Can you hear that? Like, listen to the sound the bear's snarling. God, I'll turn it up. Listen to this. Oh, God. Jesus. God, he's fallen for a long time. I think he probably like broke his neck on that fall, man. That's crazy. It's not like a sheer cliff either. Like, it's not like in the movies. Like he's like rolling down a hill for ages. Good God. Far out. Okay. Well, there you go. I know you can't see it, but you heard it. You heard it here first, gang. Okay. Let's break our bear streak. Let's talk about one animal today that's not a bear. This is about a little donkey. Hooray. God. So this might be our dickhead of the day as well. The headline reads, Wild donkey named Cupid, which I think is an insulting name considering what's happened. Cupid survives an arrow attack. Hope for Cupid. The 2-year-old donkey is recovering after emergency surgery following a severe arrow attack. The animal was spotted last week in Moreno Valley, California, with a blue arrow lodged in his shoulder. The projectile had even pierced the donkey's right lung. Thanks to the quick intervention of animal welfare officers and volunteers from the rescue organization Donkeyland. Sorry. Donkeyland. I was not expecting to read that. Anyway, Cupid was captured and operated on. Quote, right now, this is a funny story, I guess, or a funny-ish story, so I can do a funny voice before I didn't feel comfortable. Right now, I'm going to do like the chicken from Looney Tunes, like I say, right now she is stable and can stand. That's a huge improvement, said Chad Cheatham. Perfect. Vice President of Donkeyland. Hey, this is my husband Chad. He's the Vice President of Donkeyland. Once Cupid is fully recovered, she will join a herd of rescued donkeys at the organization's 800-acre sanctuary. This incident is the latest in a series of bow and arrow attacks on wild donkeys in Southern California. Since June, at least 6 donkeys have been injured or killed, allegedly by recreational hunters. Donkeyland has now offered a reward of $24,000 from donations for information leading to the arrest of the perpetrators. And there's like a wanted poster almost. It says, reward, reward, reward. A cry for help for our furry friends. Someone is illegally shooting our beloved wild burros with arrows. $24,000 reward. Please call with any information regarding this horrific crime. And then it links to the sheriff's station and the Department of Animal Services. The Riverside County Animal Control Department confirmed that the investigation is ongoing. The agency is asking for the public's help in identifying the suspects. Wild burros, descendant of pack animals from the Gold Rush era, are federally protected in the American Southwest. In Moreno County, they have long been an integral part of the landscape. According to Cheatham, they even help with fire prevention by grazing dry leaves and grass to hard-reach canyons. That's great. Firefighters love them because they say, "These guys can go places we can't," said Cheatham. Sorry, I just made myself giggle. But not all encounters between humans and animals are peaceful. Wild donkeys are frequently involved in traffic accidents or injured by fences. In neighboring San Bernardino County, they are therefore increasingly being relocated to protect areas. Animal rights activists are now hoping for tips from the public. Quote, "These attacks are cruel and senseless. The donkeys are gentle and provide an important service to the community," said Cheatham. The attacks in Moreno County involved broadhead arrows traditionally used in hunting. Oh, it doesn't mention why they've named him Cupid. I think I know why, and I do think it's a little bit offensive to the little donkey. But he is quite cute, very skinny. If you are out there shooting donkeys with arrows, go fuck yourself. You're my dickhead of the day. That's right. Dickhead of the day, you fucking donkey shooter. Okay, gang. That's going to be it for our episode today, I should say. Thank you so much for listening. I had a really good time going back and covering a story that I'd done before. And if you enjoyed this and if you think you would like me to go back and cover some earlier stories, ones like Tillicum, the Savo man-eating lions, those are the ones that sort of spring to mind. One that I'm definitely going to do that I want to cover because I don't think I covered it to the best of my ability, and it's something that still nags at me. The Great Emu War. Because every time I hear someone, particularly an American, say, "Oh, at least we didn't lose a war to a bunch of emus," that's not what happened, you fucking doodlehead, okay? That's not what happened. Billy Big Bollocks over here talking about our emus and our wars. You don't know jack shit, buddy. And I'm going to prove that to you on a following episode. But not for a while. Not every episode now is going to be redoing old stories. That would be incredibly lazy. And that's not what I'm known for on this podcast. I'm known for being not lazy and definitely uploading to the schedule I have told you guys I would be doing. That is sarcasm. I'm very lazy and not very good at this. Thank you to everybody who has listened to the show in recent weeks and sent through messages. I love you lots, and you're a bunch of good-looking people. There's a bunch of social media stuff to do. I don't know, you can go do it. Patreon's there. Love the Patreon. Actually, you should go to the Patreon and subscribe because we are doing a watch-through of a movie called Buffalo Rider, which I'm very excited for. It's very funny. So let's get into that, and I hope you guys have a fantastic week ahead. I love you lots, and if you were here, I'd give you a little kiss, but you're not, so all I can say is stay safe because as we've learned, it's a jungle out there. Bye-bye.